Sure.
Okay. So in the previous session, we have gone through the object-oriented programming concepts, and we created the class methods, and we have also created the class methods using inheritance, right? And we have reused the functionality of superclasses in subclasses. So we have tried single inheritance, multi-level inheritance, and hierarchical inheritance concepts. So multiple inheritance is not supported in ABAP because one
And
subclass cannot
plus
have
there
two
should be
superclasses, because in superclass 1 it contains one method called save. In superclass 2 there is another method with the same name, save, but functionalities are different. In superclass 1 the save method is using to save some purchase order data, but in class superclass 2 save method is using to save some sales order data. Functionalities are different but method names are same. Let's assume when you added both superclasses to one subclass, what will happen? That subclass will be having two methods with the same name, right? One
yes,
is
sir.
from the superclass 1 and the other one is from the superclass 2. That is not possible. It won't allow you to have same method, like two methods with the same name. Okay? What is the alternative for multiple inheritance?
Interface.
Interfaces we can use. Because when you add two interfaces might contain same method name. For example, save. But uh, how it will be added in the class methods using interface reference. Interface 1 tilde operator save, interface 2 tilde operator save. Like that it will be represented in the class. So there is no issue of duplicate names, right?
Yes, sir.
Now we'll see what is constructor. So what is a constructor? Constructor is a special method which executes automatically when the object
Object
is
is
created.
created. Yes, sir.
It will accept only input parameter. It won't return any output. Okay, it will accept only inputs. It won't return any output. That's what constructor method. And there is one more rule: name of the constructor method. Okay, the name should be always constructor. You cannot use any other name. The constructor method name should be constructor. Okay, so when we use constructor method, So we use constructor method to initialize the data. Initialize means, for example, to refresh all the attributes or to populate any default values to the attributes, right? To set value to the attributes so that all the methods of the class can access the data, right? To populate any default values, right? So we use constructor method so that you don't need to call that method explicitly. Whenever you create the object, it will automatically executes,
Default.
right? Constructor method will automatically executes. Normal methods, you have to create the object and you have to call the method. Then only those methods will be executed. But constructor method is different. It will automatically executes when you create the object. Now let's see how to create the constructor. And what is the important property of the constructor? The name should be always constructor, and you cannot return any output. It can accept only input.
Input.
So let's take one. We have created a class, right? Let's add one constructor method to our class. What are the attributes we have? EKKO, UKRS. Okay, let's populate some data to EKKO. Okay, by using this constructor method. The type is EKKO so that it can accept a single record. Okay, let's populate some data to this ls underscore EKKO attribute or any other internal table like attribute, whatever the example you can take. Now go to methods and add the constructor method name. So the type of the constructor, we have two types, instance and static.
Static.
Now we are creating instance, so let's make it as public. So if you observe this, this is the constructor symbol. This
Yes, sir.
indicates that this is a constructor. Okay, now click on the method and go to parameters. Inputs, what are the inputs? Inputs are optional actually. If you want inputs, you can add, okay, otherwise not.
Yes, sir.
But if you observe here, there is no option to select importing, exporting, changing, right? By default,
Yes, sir.
everything is importing.
Input.
For example, let me add some input. Mm, I'll add bookers as input. Purchase data, right? Let's select some field. Please observe one thing. We are taking few inputs as example here, right? When you are working in the project, you might have multiple inputs, but the process remains same. Okay, if you are able to understand the concept, how we are creating the method and how we are adding the parameters. If it is one parameter, 100 parameters, process same. Okay, so for this constructor method, we have added one input, that is bookers, and we don't have any exporting parameters here. Now go to method Double click on the constructor method to create the implementation. Now, okay, what is this ls underscore ekko?
Work area, like
Work area.
structure.
What is this ls underscore ekko?
Local structure.
Oh, it's attribute, right?
Yes, sir.
It's a attribute. Go to attributes. It's a attribute. This attribute
Okay.
is a work area like structure. See, because it accepts a single record, right?
Yes, sir.
So we are populating data to attribute.
Okay.
Yeah, as you said, they act as work areas and internal tables only. But when we are working in the classes, so we call them as attributes.
Attributes. Okay, sir.
Check, activate. Mm, okay, activated the class. Now, so we have a parameter for a constructor method, right?
Yes, sir.
So it's a optional input or mandatory input.
Mandatory.
Since we did not select optional checkbox, it's a mandatory input, right?
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Now, our method is completed. If you want to test this class method, how to test? Execute this. I've executed. This is for constructor input, right? This is for constructor. I've entered it.
If
Now create the
instance
instance like object. Create the instance for that instance. So
method
what is the rule for a constructor? Whenever you create the instance, constructor method will automatically execute, right? Because
yes,
we
sir.
added a importing parameter, it is asking for the input. If we don't add any importing parameter, it won't ask for this, okay? Because importing is optional for constructor. So if you check this, it's created the instance, and if you check this ls underscore ekko attribute, it is populated some values, right?
Yes, sir.
It's populated with the record, right?
Yes,
These
sir.
are attributes, right? One is
Yes.
a variable like attribute, other one is a work area like attribute, third one is internal table like attribute. Methods, these are the methods. We haven't executed methods yet, right? To test the methods, now you can execute the method. Execute and provide the company code and execute. Now it returns the output, right? Clear?
Yes, sir.
So you can set the values for attributes, or you can clear any global data, everything in constructor method. Whatever the functionality that is common for all the methods and which should execute by default, that we can place inside
Constructor.
constructor method. Okay, the name should
Okay.
be constructor. So let's change the program, or let's call this constructor method in the program. You already created one program, right, for this, or we'll create a new program, one sample program to access the constructors. But there is one change we need to do. Since we added one mandatory parameter for constructor method, when we are creating the object, what we need to pass? So here we are creating the object. Here we need to pass input. What is the input for the constructor method?
Bookers. I am
Company code.
bookers.
Let's pass some company code here because we have an importing parameter for constructor method. Then you need to pass input here in the when you are creating the
Uh,
object. Okay,
okay, sir.
that is mandatory. Whenever you are creating the object, pass that input. So here you can add, I think this is not required actually, because it's having only importing parameters, right? You don't need to define it. If you have multiple, provide space, provide the inputs. Okay, check this.
Okay, sir.
So when you have optional input per the constructor, this is not required when you are creating the object. Okay, you are not passing this to the object, you are not passing this input to the object, but you are passing this to the constructor method. Okay,
Okay, sir.
that's it. Let's debug this program. Mm, let me keep a breakpoint at constructor method. We'll see when that will be executed. Kept a breakpoint. Now I'm not keeping any breakpoint in the program. Execute, provide the input, and execute. Constructor method is triggered. What is this? ls underscore ekko? It is a attribute,
Attribute.
attribute of the class. Sub rc0, it populated the data to attribute. F5. Now we are in the calling program. So when that constructor method is executed, when we are creating this object. Okay, clear? Now
Sir.
go inside this method. Now we are inside this method. Let's try ls underscore ekko. What does it contains? It contains the data, that record what we selected, right?
Sir.
So the attributes data can be accessible by any method of that class. Okay, you can share the data, common data. Okay,
So if we have multiple importing parameters in the constructor, then we need to pass all the parameters,
yes,
sir.
all the parameters, as long as they are mandatory.
Okay, sir.
They are optional parameters, you can ignore if you don't want. Okay,
O- okay, sir.
but if they are mandatory parameter, you have to pass using space in the order, in the same order.
Okay, sir.
Okay,
Okay, sir.
now we are in start of selection, creating the object here. F5, constructor method is executed. Again, it is actually, we don't need to create object multiple times if you keep it in the global section. Okay, so that constructor method will execute only once. Now we are in get PO data. Still we have access to ls ekko for the constructor, right? So if you check the local, if you click on the local, it will automatically capture all the internal tables and whatever the uh, data objects we are using in the method. Okay, now F7. What happens if I click on F7?
Return to the pro.
Yes,
Secure.
return to the program without, like, not without executing, but it will complete the execution in single step and returns to the calling program, right?
Yes,
That's it. But we are populating data to the attribute, right?
sir.
Can we
Yes,
read
sir.
that data here in the program? So to read the data, to read the attribute data, what we need to do is data of some work area equal to object name, arrow mark, and what is the attribute? ls underscore
LLS.
ekko. Think, yeah, this is the way how we can read
Hmm.
the attribute data. Okay,
Okay, sir.
so let's check whether we are able to read that data attributes data or not. This is also important interview question, how to read the attribute data. So constructor method execution is completed. Now this is the requirement.
Reading.
Instance is created. So for LO underscore OBJ. So for LO underscore OBJ, we can read the attributes. Okay. So what does we have in ls underscore OBJ? So we have attributes in OBJ. What we can see the attributes data. Okay. When you double click on the object, now data is populated to this work area. You can use this data for any of your requirement. Okay, this is how we can read the attribute data using this object name, arrow mark, and attribute name. But when can you access this? Once you are able to create the attribute, right? Clear? Is everyone clear on this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is what constructor, a very important interview question. So when you are creating the class, so depends on your requirement, you can create constructor methods. Okay. So I'm recommending you to use object-oriented class methods to create any report programs or any other business functionality. If you need to implement, use object-oriented class methods.
Yes, sir.
But I see like
Sir.
in few projects, still they are insisting to create include programs and subroutines. So I don't know why they are following that, since we have object-oriented ABAP programming, but in some projects they ask you to go by subroutines for modularization. Okay, in that case, follow that corresponding project standards, coding standards. Okay,
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
so you should keep in mind, creating a method and implementing the functionality is not enough. You should check all your naming conventions. What are the names you are providing for the importing parameters, exporting parameters? Are these names are as per your project naming standards guidelines or not? You have to check all of this. Okay.
Yes.
In
Okay,
some
sir.
projects, creating a program is very easy than completing its review. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Follow proper programming guidelines, right? That is also very important, because until the code review is completed, your object is not set as completed, right? Even though you got the output. But few projects don't do any reviews. Their developers will create whatever they want. Okay.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
But it is always recommended to use like proper naming standards.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we'll just see interfaces, how to add interface to the class and how to create the implementation. And we'll work in detail on interfaces in coming sessions. Okay. I'll just provide you some introduction on interfaces, how to add interface. So this is the class. How can you implement the interface? How can you create
But
implementation for the interface method?
Through saying add
interface.
basic and extra.
class.
So what is the
By
interface?
it, it is a methods without
Yeah,
implementation.
interface contains methods without any implementations, and all parameters are in public, and all methods are in public visibility, and it doesn't contains any exporting parameters. It contains changing parameters.
Yes, sir.
Now we'll see a few example interfaces. We'll check the CLDemo output. Here we have two interfaces added to this class. How to create implementation for interface methods? Copy this interface and enter here display. Sorry, looks like it does not copy display. So this is the interface, right? This is the interface IF demo. Most of the standard interface names will starts with IF, okay? And if you need to
Okay,
create
sir.
your own interface, use ZIF, okay?
Okay.
We can also create our own custom interfaces.
Sir, we have to mention naming convention by our own or it will be given by our team lead, sir.
Sorry, what is it?
The naming convention, sir.
Yeah,
It would created by our own, sir.
okay, ZIF.
Okay.
In projects, he's asking for.
In projects also usually they use ZIF, okay?
Okay,
Just
sir.
to define it as interface, right? To differentiate between class and interface. Usually we use ZCL for classes,
Okay, sir.
okay? ZIF for interfaces, okay? So these are the methods available in the interface. All are instance methods, and by default these are public. And if you double click on the method, it can't open because there is no implementation for this. They are empty, okay? If you go to the parameters, it contains parameters, right?
Yes,
Only importing and returning parameter. It won't usually interface methods won't contain exporting parameters,
expert.
right? Few of them are optional. Check other methods, parameters. There is no implementation for any of these methods. To create the implementation, what we need to do?
We need to add an interface
Yeah,
to a class.
we need to add this interface to the class. In the first place, why we use interfaces? There is no code, there is no functionality available. So why we use? We use it as a template, right? Use it as a template to write our implementation, so that by using the same inputs, we can implement different functionalities in different scenario. Okay. For example, if we use display, what are the inputs for this? Data, name, exclude, include, and output. So whenever you create the implementation, these parameters are same, but you can use these parameters for different functionalities. Okay. So that again you don't need to define all these parameters and creating the method. You don't need to add all these parameters every time. Whenever you have a code, you can add this as a template and add your functionality or implementation. Okay. Now, how to implement the interface method? Select the interface, go to the class, go to interface section, enter the interface, right? Now go to methods. Methods are added, right, to your class along with your existing methods. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Now to implement this, what you need to do? Just double click on any method.
Yes.
By by using the importing and exporting parameters, implement your logic here,
Logic.
business logic, and here, and return the output using this parameter value.
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is how we can create the implementation. Okay,
Yes, sir.
now we have added methods to the superclass, right? Sorry, interfaces to the
Yes.
superclass, right? Let's go and check the subclasses. Do we have all these interfaces or not? What is the superclass for this? Subdata.
So, oh, yes, sir.
Let's go to sub SO data. What is a what?
Okay, sir.
ZCL data report. I think we are not inheriting it, correct?
Yes, sir. We use the super class, sir.
Super class. So okay, okay. Let's try this. Let's add the interface to our superclass and check is this interface available in the subclasses or not. Where is our super properties? Okay, superclass. Change it. Go to interfaces. Add this interface and go to method. I'll just create one empty implementation and activate this. I'm not writing any code. I'll just activate this. Go back. Superclass is active. Interface is inherited here also, right? We've implemented the display method, right? Yeah, it is working like other methods, normal methods, correct?
Yes, sir.
So how like methods are represented in the class using interface name tilde operator display, so that you might have another method called display, but interface name is different, right?
Yes, sir.
So in that context, multiple inheritance is going to be supported here. Okay. That's about interfaces, but when we are working on advanced concepts, we'll know in detail. But these are enough for now, okay? For your experience level and everything.